Hi guys, this is just a quick one from me, Natalie. I'm the behaviourist at Positive Dog Behaviour Consultancy. I had a couple of people ask me in a professional networking group about ways to introduce dogs back together after aggression incidents in multi-dog households. So I thought I'd talk a bit about introduction games and training methods on here, and then I could share it with those people that asked and help anybody else that wanted more information in this area. This is me and Tilly here saying hi. I also wanted to have an opportunity to practice my video skills, so I thought this would be a good way to do that, so here I am. So basically, when I approach a aggression case, especially in a multi-dog household, I follow the same sort of techniques I would if I had a same problem in my own home. So I'll talk about those interchangeably because they work in the same way. So the first thing I want to do is make as much of an assessment as possible as to what exactly is the problem, or what is perceived to be the problem, in terms of, are you being called in because there's been a massive dog fight and it's resulted in vet bills, etc., or has there been lots of small incidents over a period of time, or has there been an escalation in behaviour? First, obvious things to check. So the dog that's perceived to be the aggressor or perceived to be reactive by the owners are vet checked. So obviously health can be a massive reinforcer for behaviour, as I'm sure you all know. So for dogs in pain, they're much more likely to behave aggressively. And I'd also not only check that, but if there is a single dog that's the target for this sort of aggressive or reactive behaviour, I'd also want them vet checked as well, because it might actually indicate there's something wrong with the dog that's being picked on, and I think a lot of trainers and behaviourists sometimes miss that. I've had it in my own personal circumstance as well, when it turned out my dog had cancer and one of the dogs suddenly started picking on him. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't displaying any other symptoms, and by the time the situation had happened, it was too late for me to help him, which was devastating. But looking back on that now, definitely the change in behaviour towards one of the other dogs towards him was a big alarm bell that something was wrong there, when there weren't other symptoms, clinical symptoms for cancer present. So it's a really important one to remember there, and that's why I've gone on about it a little bit there. So firstly, we talk about good management. So especially if there's been a dog attack or a number of incidents that are escalating, we need to get those dogs separate. So we can do that through gated communities, and that's where we're using like baby safety gates, etc. Ideally extra tall ones, and be mindful that most dogs can jump over that, even if they don't realise they can. So, and once a dog does it one time, there'll be no hesitation on future attempts. But it's still, if you're moving from room to room and you have a safety gate in place, it's still buying you some time to get through the doorway without, dogs meeting each other that it isn't safe for them to do so. So I would want them to be visually not in contact with each other for 2 weeks, and that allows their cortisol levels to reduce. So once we've got as close to a baseline as possible for stress, that's when we want to start doing the reintroduction and training work. So if we were talking about a more serious attack, so especially if vet bills, etc., were involved, and we're talking about sustained length of time, a really nasty attack, I definitely wouldn't want to start with the dogs seeing each other. I'd be working with their scent primarily initially, and this softer technique is a simple way. So I'd go to a neutral place I'd set up a couple of cones 10 to 15 metres apart. I'd then have the dog that was the dog that is picked on, if you like, or the dogs that were picked on, have them walk along that line from cone to cone and have them sit periodically along that walk, and I'd mark that then with either a smaller cone or like a tea mat, what you put your cup of tea on, etc. Something small, like dish shaped, so you're aware of where that is, periodically along that route. And I'd do a separate cones for each dog that's involved. I'd then bring out the dog or dogs that are the aggressor separately, of course. I'd have them walk along those the line of the two cones with the scent pads in between where the dogs have sat. And what I'd be looking to be rewarding would be disengagement and ignoring that scent. So let them sniff where they want, that's fine. They can spend as much time sniffing in areas they want. They can wee on it, they can do what they want and progress when they want. As soon as they move on from that and disengage, that's when I'd be heavily rewarding. And if we are walking past these scent pads without any behaviour change from them, so continuing to walk on, making a good choice, loads of food, get out the really good stuff, the really high-end treats for this behaviour. We really want to reward it strongly. You could from then, in sort of more serious cases, we would then look starting with parallel walking and doing lots of disengagement exercises. And for less serious cases, where we could start more with the indoor stuff, which is particularly useful for dogs that are known to be reactive but then have had an incident between each other, because even reactive dogs can have friends and then fall out. So I'd start that indoors, and I'd be doing work where I'd have them in like a large pen or one in a crate. I'd have that blanket covered, and I'd have the other dog, I got to say, really far away. We certainly don't want a dog to feel trapped in a crate in their safe space, so a pen is more ideal. If there's any way I can get to use a pen, or if it's a case of two separate rooms with the gate and both dogs on lead either side but as far away from each other as possible. And I'd be doing massive work on disengagement, so feed for all appropriate behaviours, loads. As soon as there's any sign of aggression, wild eyes, any calming signals, staring at the other dog for more than 2 to 3 seconds, which is classed as an aggressive behaviour. So it's beyond the normal looking at each other. Stop feeding, take the dog away. So what we're just doing is a really basic association work. So good things happen when the other dog is present, and good things happen when we don't react to the other dog being present. So that's the behaviour reinforcing. And from then on, we could then move to parallel walking, and then doing lots of work on disengagement. Separately to this, while the dogs are in that 2-week cool down period, that's the period I would be focusing on muzzle work. So I would recommend Trixie muzzles. They're biphane. They're as good as boomers. I've got both. I've got Trixie muzzles and boomers. They're all custom made. I'd have the nose free and the bottom of the mouth, the bottom bit free for feeding treats. But though, please be aware if you're using them, probably with the exception of muzzles that are metal cages that dogs can get out of them. So handling and muzzle training are the keys there to stop that. So anything that's not as a metal cage, a dog that's determined can get out of and bite through and potentially bite another dog. So you need to be aware of that in your training plan and make sure those handling skills are good enough. And as with anything, I know it's really boring to say and it could be a bit patronising, but if you're not sure that it's something that you can do, you really need to refer it on to someone who specialises in an aggression case, because if something happens on your watch, you've got that on your conscience, but there can potentially be an incident occur that where a dog or person even risk their life, and those dogs can never be back together again. So we need to think about that. moving on. So moving on from parallel walking, if we can get them to within 6 foot of each other without any signs of aggression, I would interrupt staring. So dogs that are looking for more, so I'd reward them first of all for looking at the other dog. Yes, good job, treat. I'd be timing that in my head. I'd be 1, 2. At number 2, I'd then be presenting another treat in front of the dog's nose, like this, and then moving the treat to the side, so you're breaking that eye contact and feeding, and then you've got that disengagement, so you're feeding them again, and even if they then go straight back to look at the other dog, they're already thinking about their next treat. If you can get them with them parallel walking within 6 foot of each other, that's a normal distance that dogs are unfamiliar with each other will tolerate, usually other dogs being with them, without getting defensive, etc. I then move on to scent work. So you can train scent work separately, so you can do it as an enrichment thing while the 2 weeks cool down period is occurring. I use catnip, and in dogs that are too stressed to really focus and take a lot of that in, you can always do catnip and food, because if the worst case scenario you've got a dog that could find catnip and food, well, we're talking about introduction games that we're not talking about doing scent work competitions here. We're talking about teaching a skill to get dogs working together and reintroducing them. So that's absolutely fine. But if you can get them to know the scent catnip, that use this for a number of reasons. One, because it's used in supplements to help dogs relax. Catnip, so if they eat it, it's not going to cause them any harm, and generally it's a smell they don't tend to find offensive, so we're not going to be adding stress to their behaviour. Once you've got those skills established, so go search, identify when they're found, whatever you want to do. I keep it simple for this. Usually a stare or sit or lay down in front of where the hide is and the scent article is, and then you would start working with the dogs together. So I would do that by having a lead dog, so you have one dog in front of the other, let them find the first hide, the dog that's in front, reward, and then let the dog that's behind also go up to that hide and claim their reward, and then swap them over. So you've always got a lead dog, and I'd be looking to do scent work. This is with the dogs on the lead and not allowing the dogs to touch. So we need good handling here. We need them to be at least 1 to 2 meters apart while we're doing this. So it's very careful management, and it's just getting the dogs to focus on what they should be doing, which is sniffing, rather than being overly focused on each other. And the more they're doing stuff they enjoy, like sniffing, and then being fed for finding stuff through sniffing, the less they are going to be focused on each other, and the more they're going to be associating with good things happening when the other dog is around. And one thing we need to make sure of, we're not encouraging things like resource guarding and territorial aggression. So when we just going back now to, if we've got gated communities in the house, which is often necessary, it's necessary in my own household. I have 7 dogs. One is a foster, but they're all broken dogs. They've all got reactivity and aggression issues, and they're all at different stages of rehab. So we have to be really careful, and we have to have those gated communities set up as part of normal training, and so that they're ready to use when we need to, if anything happens. So and the way we do that is it's also a great opportunity to teach dogs that separation is rewarding. So we have toys and treats that are only available when dogs are in these gated areas, and we swap them around frequently enough so that dog doesn't start to feel like one specific area is theirs to guard, and that's important. So we have a dog that's got a tendency to resource guard and for territorial aggression, and we've learned with her specifically that if we don't allow her to occupy space for more than a few days, so we can do it. She can go in the same area for like time by herself for 2 or 3 days without a problem. If we start to let it go longer than that, then that's when she starts to think, hold on, this is my area now. I don't want any other dogs here. So that so in her case, that would be when we change. So we do it a little bit earlier than that. So we swap them around every couple of days, well before she starts to claim an area, so that that's never building up and becoming an issue. So I hope that's some help. If you want any more information, please let me know. I'm going to tag the couple of girls in this that wanted help with this, and please ask any questions. I've done it in this format because I don't know if I said at the beginning of the video, I've had a period of ill health, and I really find it particularly frustrating not to deliver what I promised, and I said I'd speak to these girls, and I've just not been well enough to do that. So while I've got 10-15 minutes and I feel okay, I thought let's quickly get this down on video, and hopefully it will be of some help. Thanks then, bye bye.